A Kitten at a Grave holds a secret case unveiling Noah's hidden trail of thrilling memories. Welcome to Pause Verve. Subscribe, like and share this story with those who need love. Ethan trudged through Willow Hill Cemetery with a thermos of chamomile tea gripped tightly in his hand. The Sunday ritual had become his anchor since Noah died 3 years ago. The air was crisp with autumn's bite, and leaves crunched under his boots along the gravel path to the older graves. Noah's headstone stood modest and grey, etched with his name and a wave symbol he used to doodle. Ethan set the tea by the stone as always, a small offering to the brother who taught him to laugh through life's storms. He knelt to brush dirt from the base, his fingers tracing the familiar carving. His eyes caught something new, a flicker of movement where none should be. A kitten no bigger than his hand curled tightly against the headstone, its orange fur faint like a dying ember. It hadn't been there 5 minutes ago when he'd paused to tie his scarf against the chill. The kitten shivered, its tiny body trembling. In the cold, its eyes barely open, one crusted with grime. Ethan's breath hitched his heart, stumbling over the sight. He hadn't meant to speak, but the words slipped out soft and unbidden. "Where did you come from, little one?" The cemetery was silent, save for the wind whispering through bare branches and the distant caw of a crow. He scanned the rows of graves, expecting to see a mother cat or a passerby who might have left the creature, but there was nothing. Just him and this fragile thing nestled where Noah rested, a place Ethan had come to know as sacred. He crouched closer, ignoring the damp grass, soaking through his jeans to his knees. The kitten's fur was matted with burrs and dirt, a faint scratch across its nose, red but not bleeding. Its collar, a worn strip of leather, hung loose around its neck. No tag, no name, no clue to its origin. Ethan's chest tightened, a pang of something he couldn't name. He reached out slowly, his hand hovering above the kitten, half expecting it to bolt or hiss. To his surprise, it didn't flinch. It lifted its head with effort, its body straining, and pressed against his palm, letting out a faint hemachu that was more breath than sound. Ethan's fingers curled gently around it, feeling the rapid thrum of its heartbeat. Something about its eyes felt old, like it carried a weight no animal should, a knowing that made his skin prickle. He noticed its belly swollen, unnaturally tight, not the soft roundness of a healthy kitten, but something rigid and wrong. His fingers brushed its side and felt a hardness beneath the fur, a shape that didn't belong. His stomach twisted with unease, a cold certainty settling in. This wasn't hunger or illness. This was something else, something deliberate. Ethan scooped the kitten gently into his scarf, swaddling it against his chest to shield it from the wind. Its warmth seeped through the fabric, faint but steady, a fragile pulse against his own. He stood, his boots sinking into the soft earth, and made for his truck parked beyond the cemetery gate. The thermos lay forgotten by the stone tea pooling in the grass, a dark stain spreading over the roots. He didn't look back, didn't pause to collect the offering. The kitten's shallow breaths urged him forward, a quiet plea he couldn't ignore. He drove to Dr. Larson's clinic, 10 miles out, the old Ford rattling over country roads, its engine coughing in the cold. The kitten lay limp in the passenger seat, wrapped in his scarf, its tiny chest rising and falling with effort. Ethan's mind raced questions, piling like leaves in a storm. How had it found Noah's grave? Why there of all places? Why now, after 3 years of silence? The clinic came into view, a converted barn with a sign swinging in the breeze, its paint faded, but welcoming. He parked crookedly in his haste and carried the kitten inside his arms, cradling it like glass. His voice was steady despite the knot in his throat as he pushed through the door. "Dr. Larson, I need help. I found her at Noah's grave. Something's wrong." The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, ushered him to an exam room, her face softening at the sight of the frail creature. Ethan sat on a bench in the sterile room, clutching the scarf, his fingers tracing the kitten's faint outline through the fabric. He named her Ember in his mind, for the glow of her fur a spark against the grey of loss. The name felt right, like it had been waiting for her. He watched her breathe, each rise of her chest a small defiance against whatever had brought her to this point. His thoughts drifted to Noah, to the way he'd always found strays as a kid, coaxing them with bits of bread or a gentle voice. Ethan had never had the patience for it, but Noah could sit for hours earning trust with nothing but time. Was this kitten one of Noah's somehow tied to him across the impossible divide? Ethan shook his head at the thought. It was foolish, wishful, thinking born of grief that still clung like damp earth. Yet the kitten's presence at the grave felt like more than chance. He leaned closer, whispering to Ember, though he felt silly doing it. "Hang in there, okay? We're going to figure this out." Her ear twitched at his voice, and one eye cracked open, meeting his gaze. For a moment he swore she understood not just the words, but the weight behind them. The door opened, and Dr. Larson stepped in her white coat, wrinkled from a long shift. Ethan stood ready to explain, but the words caught in his throat. He held out the scarf with Ember inside his hand, steady, but his heart unsteady. "She's hurt," he managed. "I don't know how she got there, but she was on my brother's grave. There's something wrong with her stomach." Dr. Larson nodded, her expression calm, but focused, as she took Ember gently. "Let's take a look," she said, her voice a steady anchor. Ethan sat back down, his hands empty now, his scarf draped over the exam table. He watched as Dr. Larson unwrapped Ember, her hands moving with practiced care. The kitten didn't protest, only let out a soft sound as she was placed on the table. Ethan's gaze stayed fixed on her, on the small spark of life that had found him in the quiet of the cemetery. For the first time since Noah's death, he felt something stir in his chest, not quite hope, but a pull to protect something so small and impossibly alive. It was a feeling he hadn't known he could still carry a flicker of purpose in the shadow of loss. He clasped his hands together, his knuckles white, and waited for answers, wondering what Ember carried inside her that tied her to Noah's memory. Ethan sat in the exam room of Dr. Larson's clinic, his hands clasped tightly as he watched the veterinarian cradle Ember with steady hands. The kitten lay on the table, her faint orange fur dulled under the fluorescent light, her tiny body still, wrapped partially in Ethan's scarf. Dr. Larson's brow furrowed as she gently pressed Ember's swollen belly, her fingers probing with a precision that spoke of years spent mending broken creatures. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest, each second stretching longer than the last. He couldn't shake the image of Ember curled against Noah's headstone, a fragile spark in the grey of Willow Hill Cemetery. The memory clung to him sharp and vivid, like the scent of damp earth after rain. Dr. Larson looked up, her eyes meeting, Ethan's with a mix of concern and curiosity. "There's something unusual here," she said, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "It's not food or a blockage. It feels like an object, something solid." Ethan leaned forward, his breath catching. "An object? How could that be?" Dr. Larson didn't answer right away, instead turning to prepare a portable X-ray machine wheeled in by the receptionist. Ethan's mind raced back to the cemetery, to the moment he'd seen Ember, her shivering form, pressed against the cold stone where Noah's name was carved. He thought of Noah's wave symbol, etched beside the dates, the same one his brother used to sketch on napkins and in the margins of books. The kitten's presence felt like a message, one Ethan couldn't yet read, but couldn't ignore. He stood and stepped closer to the table, his boots scuffing the linoleum floor. Ember's eyes, one crusted shut, the other. A faint green flickered toward him. She let out a soft mew, barely audible, and Ethan's chest tightened. He reached out his hand, hovering over her matted fur, unsure if he should touch her. "She's so small," he murmured, more to himself than to Dr. Larson. "How did she survive out there?" Dr. Larson adjusted the X-ray machine, her movements swift but gentle. "She's a fighter, that's for sure. But whatever's inside her isn't natural. We need to see what we're dealing with." Ethan nodded, his throat dry, as he stepped back to give her space. The machine hummed to life, casting a faint glow over Ember's tiny frame. Ethan watched the screen where shadows and shapes began to form, his pulse quickening. The image sharpened, revealing delicate bones and the faint curve of Ember's ribs. But there, in the center of her belly, was something else, a rectangular outline stark against the organic curves. Ethan's breath stopped. It looked like a box, small and sharp-edged, nothing like the rounded forms of a kitten's insides. Dr. Larson leaned closer, her expression tightening. "That's not something she swallowed by accident," she said softly. "It's too precise, too contained." Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. "What does that mean? Someone put it there?" Dr. Larson met his gaze, her eyes steady but troubled. I've seen cases of animals ingesting odd things, but this is different. We need to operate soon or she won't make it. Ethan nodded his mind, a tangle of fear and disbelief. Do it, he said, his voice firmer than he felt. Save her. Dr. Larson called for her assistant and began preparing Ember for surgery, her hands moving with quiet efficiency. Ethan was ushered to a waiting area, a small room with faded chairs and a coffee machine that smelled of burnt grounds. He sank into a seat, his scarf still clutched in his hands, the faint warmth of ember lingering in the fabric. His thoughts spiraled back to Noah, to the Sunday mornings they'd spent fishing at the lake, to the way Noah could make even the worst days feel lighter. Ethan had been coming to the cemetery every week since the accident, carrying chamomile tea as a gesture to keep Noah close. But Ember's arrival felt like something more like Noah had reached across the divide to place her there. Ethan shook, his head at the thought. It was impossible. Noah was gone, killed in a car crash on a rain-slicked road 3 years ago. Ethan had chosen the headstone, had stood by the grave as the earth was filled. Yet Ember's eyes, her knowing gaze, stirred something in him, a flicker of connection he hadn't felt since Noah's laugh filled their childhood home. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his thumb hovering over his cousin Liam's number. Liam and Noah had been inseparable growing up, always tinkering with projects or planning impromptu road trips. If anyone might know why a kitten with a strange object inside her appeared at Noah's grave, it would be Liam. Ethan hesitated, then set the phone down. Not yet. He needed to know what was inside Ember first. The waiting room clock ticked on its hands, crawling past an hour. Ethan's leg bounced restlessly, his scarf now folded neatly in his lap. He thought of Ember's collar, the worn leather strip with no tag. It had been too big for her neck, slipping loosely, as if meant for another animal. He wondered where she'd come from, who had left her in the cemetery alone and shivering. The door opened, and Dr. Larson stepped out, peeling off her surgical gloves. Ethan stood, his heart in his throat. She's stable, Dr. Larson said, her voice tired but warm. It was touch and go, but she's a tough one. Ethan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. And the object, he asked. Dr. Larson held a sealed plastic container. Inside was a small metal case no bigger than a matchbook, its surface dented but intact. There's an engraving on it, she said. I'll clean it up and we can take a closer look. Ethan stared at the case, his pulse quickening. An engraving. He followed Dr. Larson back to the exam room where Ember lay in a recovery kennel, a tiny bandage on her shaved belly. Her breathing was steady now, her eyes closed in a medicated sleep. Ethan knelt beside her, his fingers brushing the edge of the kennel. You did good, he whispered. Rest now. Dr. Larson returned with the cleaned case and handed it to him. Ethan's breath caught as he saw the engraving, Noah's initials, and the wave symbol clear as day. His hands trembled as he turned the case over its weight, heavier than it should have felt. This was Noah's, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Larson tilted her head, her expression soft but questioning. You recognize it? Ethan nodded, unable to explain the flood of memories the symbol unleashed. Noah drawing waves on foggy windows, on sandy beaches, on the back of Ethan's hand during long hospital waits. He opened the case with shaking fingers. Inside was a folded photograph of him and Noah at a beach, their faces sunlit and laughing. Tucked behind it was a note in Noah's slanted handwriting. You'll understand when you see her. Ethan's vision blurred, his chest aching, with a mix of grief and wonder. He looked at Ember sleeping soundly, her tiny body, a bridge to something he couldn't yet grasp. For the first time in 3 years, he felt Noah's presence not as a memory, but as a guide pulling him toward answers he hadn't known to seek. Ethan stood frozen in the exam room of Dr. Larson's clinic, his eyes locked on the small metal case in his hand, its surface etched with Noah's initials and the wave symbol. That had been his brother's signature. The photograph inside of him and Noah laughing on a beach 3 summers ago, pressed against his chest like a bruise too tender to touch. The note in Noah's handwriting. You'll understand when you see her, looped in his mind, each word a thread, tying him to the kitten now named Ember, sleeping in the recovery kennel. Her tiny body bandaged and still bore the weight of whatever had brought her to Noah's grave in Willow Hill Cemetery. Dr. Larson stood nearby, her arms crossed her gaze, shifting between Ethan and the case. She'd cleaned it meticulously after. The surgery that saved Ember's life, but the questions in her eyes mirrored Ethan's own. How did this get inside her? She asked, her voice low, as if speaking too loudly might break the fragile moment. Ethan shook his head, his throat tight. I don't know. It's Noah's, my brother's. He died 3 years ago. Dr. Larson's brow furrowed, but she didn't press instead, turning to check Ember's chart, her pen tapping softly against the clipboard. Ethan's fingers traced the case's edges, its dents and scratches telling a story he couldn't yet read. He thought of Ember shivering against the headstone, her swollen belly hiding this impossible relic. The X-ray image flashed in his memory, the stark rectangular shape lodged in her tiny frame unnatural and deliberate. Someone had placed it there, someone who knew Noah, who knew Ethan would find her. His stomach churned at the thought. Dr. Larson set the chart down and knelt beside the kennel, her hand resting lightly on its edge. She's stable for now, she said, but she'll need rest and careful monitoring. Whatever was done to her, it took a toll. Ethan nodded, his gaze drifting to Ember's faint orange fur, now cleaned of dirt and burrs. Her breathing was steady, a small victory against the odds. He wanted to ask how a kitten could survive such a thing, but the words felt too heavy, too tangled with the note's promise. You'll understand. He didn't understand, not yet, but the pull to protect Ember, to follow this thread wherever it led, was stronger than his doubt. Dr. Larson stood and motioned to the X-ray screen still glowing in the corner. Let's go over what we saw, she said. Ethan followed her, his boots heavy on the linoleum. The image was clearer now, the kitten's delicate bones framing the alien shape in her belly. It's a case, all right, Dr. Larson said, zooming in. Metal, likely aluminum. No corrosion, which means it wasn't in her long. Ethan leaned closer, his breath fogging the screen. How long, he asked. Days, maybe a week. Hard to say without testing the tissue. Ethan's mind raced. A week ago he'd been at the cemetery, same as every Sunday, leaving chamomile tea by Noah's grave. No kitten, no sign of anything unusual. Yet here was Ember, carrying a piece of Noah's past, like a message from beyond. He thought of the leather collar too big for her neck, the scratch on her nose, the way her eyes seemed to hold more than a kitten should. Dr. Larson switched off the screen and turned to him. Ethan, I've seen a lot in 20 years, but this is new. I need to report it to the authorities. It's not just medical, it's ethical. Ethan's grip tightened on the case. Not yet, he said, his voice sharper than intended. Please, I need to figure out what this means. It's about my brother. Dr. Larson studied him, her expression softening. She nodded slowly. I'll hold off for now, but you need to be straight with me. If there's more to this, I want to know. Ethan exhaled, his shoulders easing slightly. Thank you, he said. I'll tell you what I find. He slipped the case into his jacket pocket, its weight a quiet reminder of the task ahead. Dr. Larson handed him a care sheet for Ember. Soft food, small meals keep her warm. She'll be ready to go home tomorrow, she said. Ethan glanced at the kennel where Ember slept, her tiny chest rising and falling. Home. The word felt strange. His small apartment with its bare walls and unopened boxes from Noah's things wasn't a home, not really. But Ember needed him, and that was enough for now. He thanked Dr. Larson and stepped into the waiting area, his mind a storm of questions. The photograph crinkled in his pocket as he sat on a faded chair, the note's words echoing. You'll understand when you see her. He pulled out the photo, studying Noah's grin, the way his arms slung around Ethan's shoulders. They'd been so young then, carefree, before the accident stole Noah away. Ethan's throat burned. He folded the photo and tucked it back, wondering what Noah had meant, what Ember was meant to show him. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a reflex to check it, but he ignored it. The world could wait. He thought of calling Liam, his cousin, who'd known Noah better than anyone, but hesitated. Liam would want answers Ethan didn't have. Instead, he leaned back, his head against the wall, the hum of the coffee machine filling the silence. He pictured Noah sketching waves on foggy windows, telling stories of hidden treasures buried in the woods. Was this his treasure, a kitten carrying a secret? Ethan's eyes drifted to the exam room door where Ember rested. He stood and asked the receptionist if he could see her again. She nodded, leading him back. Ember was awake now, her green eye blinking, slowly as Ethan knelt beside her. "Hey, little one," he whispered. "You're tougher than you look." Her ear twitched, and she stretched a paw toward him, her claws catching faintly on the kennel's blanket. Ethan smiled, a rare thing these days, and felt a warmth he hadn't known since Noah's laugh filled their childhood home. He sat there, for a long time, watching her breathe, letting the moment anchor him. Dr. Larson returned with a small bowl of soft food for Ember. "She's already showing fight," she said. Ethan nodded his fingers, brushing the case in his pocket. He thought of the symmetry of the tea pooling in the grass of the wind that seemed to carry Noah's voice. Ember mewed softly, pulling him back. He looked at her, at the spark in her gaze, and knew this was only the beginning. Whatever Noah had left behind, whatever Ember carried, it was his to follow. He stood his resolve, hardening. "I'll be back tomorrow," he told Dr. Larson. She nodded, her eyes kind but searching. "Be careful, Ethan," she said. "This feels bigger than you think." He didn't reply, only gave Ember one last look before stepping into the evening air. The stars were out now, sharp against the black. He drove home the case, a steady weight against, his heart wondering what secrets it held and how a kitten had become the key to Noah's last wish. Ethan stood in the dim light of Dr. Larson's exam room, his fingers trembling as he held the small metal case, its surface gleaming faintly under the clinic's fluorescent glow. The engraving, Noah's initials alongside the wave symbol he'd drawn since they were kids, stared back at him, a quiet accusation from a brother gone 3 years. Inside the case, nestled in his palm, was the photograph of him and Noah on a beach, their faces lit with summer joy, and a note in Noah's slanted handwriting, "You'll understand when you see her." Ember, the kitten who'd carried this impossible relic, lay sleeping in the recovery kennel, her bandaged belly rising and falling with each shallow breath. Dr. Larson stood across from him, her arms crossed, her eyes flicking between the case and Ethan's face. She'd just finished explaining the surgery, how the case had been lodged against Ember's intestines, wrapped in a thin layer of plastic as if meant to protect it. "This wasn't an accident," she said, her voice steady, but laced with unease. "Someone intended for this to be found." Ethan's throat tightened, his mind reeling. He looked at Ember. Her faint orange fur cleaned now her tiny body, a fragile bridge to Noah's memory. The note's words echoed, pulling him back to the moment he'd found her curled against the headstone in Willow Hill Cemetery. He'd left chamomile tea there, as always, only to find it spilled, the cap chewed through, as if Ember had tried to drink it. His chest ached with the weight of it all. How could Noah have done this? He's been gone 3 years. Dr. Larson stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on the exam table. "Ethan, you said this is your brother's. Do you have any idea what it means?" Ethan shook his head, his fingers closing around the case. "I don't know. He was into projects, always tinkering with ideas, but nothing like this. Nothing with animals. He thought of Noah's sketches of waves on napkins, his late-night talks about leaving something behind that mattered. But a kitten, a case inside her. It was beyond anything Noah had ever shared." Dr. Larson nodded, her expression softening. "She's stable enough to go home tomorrow, but I need to understand what we're dealing with. If someone did this to her, there could be more out there." Ethan's stomach twisted at the thought. More kittens, more secrets. He slipped the case into his jacket pocket, its weight grounding him. "I'll figure it out," he said. "Just give me a little time." Dr. Larson hesitated, then nodded. "I'm trusting you, Ethan. But if this gets bigger, I can't stay quiet." He understood the ethical line she walked, but the note's promise held him fast. He looked at Ember, her green eye half open now, watching him with a quiet intensity. "You're the key, aren't you?" He whispered too low for Dr. Larson to hear. The kitten's ear twitched as if in answer. Ethan sat by the kennel, his knees pressed against the cold floor. He thought of the symmetry of the wind that seemed to carry Noah's laugh. The photograph crinkled in his pocket as he pulled it out again, studying the moment frozen in time. Noah's arm around his shoulders, the beach stretching endless behind. Them. They'd spent that day building sandcastles, arguing over who could skip stones farther. Noah had won as always, his laugh louder than the waves. Ethan's eyes stung. He folded the photo and tucked it away, the note's words burning in his mind. "You'll understand." He didn't, but he would. For Ember, for Noah, he'd follow this thread wherever it led. Dr. Larson left to check another patient, leaving Ethan alone with Ember. He reached through the kennel's bars, his fingers brushing her tiny paw. She stirred her head, lifting slightly to nuzzle his hand. The gesture was small, but it cracked something open in him, a warmth he hadn't felt since Noah's death. He thought of the leather collar too big for her neck, the scratch on her nose, the way she'd pressed against his palm in the cemetery. She wasn't just a stray. She was chosen. By whom he didn't know, but the case, the note, the photograph all pointed to Noah. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it. The world outside could wait. He stood and paced the room, his boots echoing softly. The X-ray image lingered in his memory, the stark outline of the case inside Ember's fragile frame. Dr. Larson had said it was recent days, maybe a week. Someone had placed it there, knowing Ethan would find her. The thought sent a chill down his spine. Was it a friend of Noah's, a stranger, someone who'd watched him at the cemetery every Sunday? He stopped pacing, his hand closing over the case in his pocket. He needed answers, but where to start? His cousin Liam came to mind again. Liam and Noah had been thick as thieves, always working on odd projects or disappearing on road trips. If anyone knew about Noah's plans, it would be him. Ethan pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. "Liam, I need to talk. Found something. At Noah's grave. Call me." He hit send, then slipped the phone back, his gaze returning to Ember. She was awake now, her green eye fixed on him, her tiny body curled tightly, as if guarding something even in sleep. Ethan knelt again, his voice soft. "What did he tell you, little one? What's this all about?" Ember blinked slowly, her paw stretching toward him again. He smiled despite the weight in his chest, a flicker of hope stirring. Dr. Larson returned with a small blanket for Ember, tucking it around her gently. "She's doing better than I expected," she said. "You can take her home in the morning." Ethan nodded, his mind already racing ahead. Home to his quiet apartment where Noah's boxes sat unopened in the corner. He'd avoided them for years, too raw to face, but now he wondered if they held clues. Maybe a sketch, a letter, something to explain the case. He thanked Dr. Larson and stepped outside, the evening air sharp against his skin. The stars were out bright and unyielding above the clinic's barn. He drove home the case, a steady weight in his pocket, the photograph and note tucked safely beside it. His apartment was dark when he arrived, the silence heavy as he flicked on a lamp. He set the case on the kitchen table, its engraving catching the light. Noah's initials seemed to pulse a quiet challenge. Ethan sat staring at it, his fingers tracing the wave symbol. He thought of Ember, of her knowing gaze, of the way she'd found him in the cemetery. For the first time since Noah's death, he felt a purpose beyond grief, a path laid out by a brother who'd never stopped reaching for him. He leaned back, his eyes never leaving the case, wondering what secrets it held, and how a kitten had become the messenger of Noah's last wish. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, the small metal case glinting under the dim light of a single bulb-weathered lamp, its engraved wave symbol, and Noah's initials seeming to pulse with a life of their own. The photograph of him and Noah on that sunlit beach, and the note in Noah's handwriting. "You'll understand when you see her," lay beside it, each a tether to the kitten named Ember, now recovering at Dr. Larson's clinic. Ethan's fingers traced the case's edges, his mind a storm of questions since finding Ember curled against Noah's headstone in Willow Hill Cemetery. The impossible reality that someone had placed the case inside her tiny body gnawed at him, a deliberate act tying her to Noah's memory. He'd texted his cousin Liam last night needing to talk, but Liam hadn't replied yet, and Ethan's patience was fraying. Liam and Noah had been inseparable growing up, always tinkering with strange projects or vanishing on impulsive road trips to nowhere. If anyone knew what Noah might have been planning, it was Liam. Ethan stood and paced his small apartment, his boots scuffing the worn hardwood floor. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. He glanced at the unopened boxes in the corner. Noah's things packed after the accident, but too painful to touch. Maybe they held answers, a sketch, a letter, something to explain the case, the note, the kitten. He knelt by the boxes, his hands hesitating before lifting the first lid. Inside were books, dog-eared sci-fi novels, a chipped coffee mug, Noah's favorite, leather journal. Ethan's chest tightened as he opened the journal, its pages filled with Noah's slanted handwriting sketches of waves, circuit diagrams, notes about memory and emotion. One entry caught his eye, dated 6 months before the accident. Memory isn't just in the mind, it's in the world. Objects, places, creatures can carry it if you know how to bind it. Ethan's breath hitched. Was this what Noah had done bound? A memory to Ember. He flipped further, finding a rough drawing of a small case labeled Echo Seed. His pulse quickened. This was it, the case inside Ember. But how had it gotten there and why? He set the journal aside and dug deeper, pulling out a photo of Noah and Liam soldering something small and metallic. Ethan's hands shook. He needed Liam now. He grabbed his phone and called the line, ringing twice before Liam's voice came through, rough with sleep. "Ethan, what's up?" Ethan didn't waste time. "I found something at Noah's grave. A kitten with a metal case inside her. It's got his initials and a note. I need you to come over." Liam was silent a beat too long. "You're serious? I'll be there in an hour." Ethan hung up and returned to the boxes, his fingers brushing a folded map Noah had marked with red X's and cryptic notes. One spot was circled, a park where they'd played as kids. Ethan's skin prickled. Was there more out there? He thought of Ember's knowing gaze, the way she'd pressed against his palm in the cemetery. She wasn't just a stray, she was a guide. Liam arrived, his rusted pickup rattling into the driveway. He stepped inside carrying a 6-pack and a bag of jerky, like this was just another hangout. "Where's this mystery cat?" he asked, grinning until he saw Ethan's face. Ethan handed him the case, the photo, the note. Liam's grin faded as he studied the engraving. "This is Noah's," he said, his voice low. "I helped him make it." Ethan leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Liam sat, running a hand through his hair. "A couple months before he died, Noah got obsessed with this idea that memories could be stored physically, not just in brains but in things, animals even. He called it his Echo Seed project, wanted to leave pieces of himself for you to find." Ethan's stomach twisted. "So he put this in a kitten?" Liam shook his head. "I didn't know he went that far. We built the case, soldered it shut, but he never said what he did with it." Ethan handed him the journal, pointing to the Echo Seed sketch. Liam's eyes widened. He did it. He actually did it. They sat in silence, the weight of Noah's plan settling over them. Ethan thought of Ember's swollen belly, the X-ray showing the case's sharp edges. Someone had to have placed it there after Noah's death. But who? Liam flipped through the journal, stopping at a list of names and roles. Clara, Keeper of Paths. Victor the Skeptic. Others Ethan didn't know. Noah had a team, Liam said. People I never met. He kept it quiet, even from me. Ethan's mind raced. Was one of them responsible for Ember? He looked at the map again, the circled park pulling at him. "We need to check this place," he said. "If Noah left this, there could be more." Liam nodded, but his eyes were troubled. "If someone put that case in her, they're still out there." "Be careful, Ethan." They drove to the park that afternoon, the air sharp with autumn's edge. Ethan carried the journal, the map, the case, his heart pounding as they walked to a bench Noah loved. Ethan knelt and felt under it, his fingers brushing. A loose panel. Inside was a tin box, rusted but intact. He opened it, finding a cassette tape and a single page in Noah's hand. "If you're here, it's working." Ethan's throat burned. He looked at Liam, who was staring at the tape like it might speak. Back at the apartment, they played it on an old stereo, Noah's voice crackling through. "Ethan, if you're hearing this, you found her. I trained Ember to find you, to carry what I couldn't say. There's more out there. Follow her." The tape clicked. Off. Ethan sat stunned, his eyes on the case. Noah had planned this, all of it. Liam rubbed his jaw. He trained a kitten before he died. Someone kept her until now. Released her at the grave. Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. "We need to find them." He thought of Ember recovering at the clinic, her green eye watching him. She was more than a messenger. She was Noah's echo, alive and breathing. He stood, the journal in hand. "Let's go get her tomorrow. She's part of this." Liam agreed, his voice soft. "Noah always said you'd know what to do." Ethan looked at the photo of him, and Noah, the note's words echoing. "You'll understand when you see her." He was starting to, and with Ember by his side, He'd uncover the rest no matter who was watching. Ethan woke to the faint hum of his apartment's radiator, his eyes heavy from a night spent poring over Noah's journal, the metal case, and the cassette tape from the park bench. The words of Noah's voice. If you're hearing this, you found her echoed in his mind, a lifeline to his brother's impossible plan. Ember was coming home today from Dr. Larson's clinic, and Ethan felt a pull to her, a need to protect the kitten who'd carried Noah's echo seed across the divide of death. He drove to the clinic, the morning air sharp with frost, the old Ford's heater sputtering as he clutched the steering wheel. The case rested in his jacket pocket alongside the photograph of him and Noah on the beach, and the note, "You'll understand when you see her." Liam's revelation yesterday that Noah had worked with others, Clara Victor and names unknown, gnawed at him. Someone had placed the case inside Ember after Noah's death, a deliberate act Ethan couldn't yet unravel. At the clinic, Dr. Larson greeted him with a tired smile, leading him to Ember's kennel. The kitten was awake. Her faint orange fur fluffed her green eye brighter now, though the other remained crusted. "She's a fighter," Dr. Larson said, handing Ethan a care sheet. "Soft food, small meals keep her warm." Ethan knelt by the kennel, his fingers, brushing Ember's tiny paw. She mewed softly, stretching toward him, her bandage barely visible against her shaved belly. "You're coming home," he whispered, a warmth spreading in his chest. Dr. Larson watched her expression, soft but searching. "Any leads on that case?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "It's Noah's. I'm figuring it out." She didn't press, only handed him a carrier for Ember. "Be careful, Ethan," she said. He nodded, slipping the carrier's handle over his arm. Back at the apartment, he set Ember's carrier by the couch, opening it to let her explore. She stepped out slowly, her movements cautious, her nose twitching as she sniffed the air. Ethan watched her every step, his heart tethered to her fragile form. He'd cleared a corner with a blanket and a small bowl of water, but Ember ignored them. Instead, she padded to the attic door, a narrow staircase Ethan rarely used. She sat there, her tail flicking, and let out a sharp meow. Ethan frowned, following her gaze. "What's up there?" he asked, half expecting an answer. Ember meowed again, her green eye fixed on the door. He opened it, the hinges creaking, and followed her up the stairs, her tiny body navigating the steps with surprising determination. The attic was a clutter of dust and memories boxes of Noah's things, old furniture, a guitar Noah used to strum late at night. Ember made a beeline for the guitar propped against a crate, her nose brushing its strings. She sat and stared, her tail still. Ethan's throat tightened. Noah had played that guitar during their last summer together, simple chords filling the air as they talked about nothing and everything. "Did you know this was his?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Ember's ear twitched, but she didn't move. He lifted the guitar, setting it aside, and noticed a faint scratch on the crate beneath. His fingers traced it, revealing a carved wave symbol, Noah's mark. His pulse quickened. He pried the crate open, finding a small notebook inside its pages, filled with Noah's sketches of animals, circuits, notes about emotional anchors. One page read, "Ember trained for scent and sound. She'll find the next step." Ethan's breath caught. Noah had trained her deliberately. He looked at Ember, who was now pawing at a locked drawer in an old desk. Her tiny claws scratched insistently, her meows growing sharper. Ethan grabbed a screwdriver from a toolbox and pried the drawer open. Inside was a single key, rusted but intact, and a folded paper with coordinates and the words, "Look where we dreamed." His hands shook as he recognized the coordinates, a lake where he and Noah used to camp as kids. Ember meowed again, her gaze unwavering. "You're showing me, aren't you?" he said, his voice thick. That night, Ember's behavior grew stranger. Ethan had set her blanket by his bed, but she leapt onto the nightstand instead, her eyes fixed on a small mirror hanging on the wall. She meowed sharply and tapped the glass with her paw, her reflection trembling in the dim light. Ethan sat up, his skin prickling. Noah used to say mirrors held truths, showed you what you couldn't admit. "What are you seeing?" he asked. Ember tapped. The mirror again, then looked at him, her green eye gleaming. He stood and lifted her gently, her body warm against his palm. She didn't resist, only nuzzled his hand before leaping back to the nightstand. Ethan stared into the mirror, seeing only his tired face, but feeling Noah's presence like a whisper. He thought of the journal's words, Emotional anchors. Was Ember anchored to Noah's emotions, his memories guiding her to places only Ethan would understand? The next morning he called Liam, who arrived with coffee and a skeptical frown. "You're saying she's leading you to stuff?" Liam asked, watching Ember curl up by the attic door again. Ethan showed him the notebook, the key, the coordinates. "She's not just a cat. Noah trained her for this." Liam rubbed his jaw, flipping through the notebook. "He always said animals could carry more than we thought. But this is wild." They drove to the lake that afternoon, the key and notebook in Ethan's bag, Ember in her carrier. The lake was quiet, its surface glassy under a gray sky. Ethan led the way to a clearing where he and Noah had built forts as kids. Ember leapt from the carrier and trotted to a tree stump, her nose low. Ethan knelt beside her, his fingers brushing the stump's edge. A faint wave symbol was carved into the wood. He dug beneath it, his hands unearthing a tin box. Inside was another tape and a photograph of Noah holding a kitten that looked eerily like Ember. The tape played Noah's voice, calm and clear. "You're getting closer, Ethan. Ember's not just a guide, she's my echo. Keep following her." Ethan's eyes stung as he looked at Ember sitting by the stump, her tail sweeping the dirt. Liam shook his head. He planned this all before he died. Someone had to finish it. Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. "We find them." He thought of Ember's mirror. Tapping her insistence on the guitar, the key. She was Noah's map, alive and breathing. Back home, he set Ember on the couch, her green eye watching him as he studied the notebook. The list of names, Clara, Victor, others, hinted at a network Noah had built. Ethan felt the weight of it, the danger of someone out there who'd placed the case in Ember. But with her by his side, he'd uncover Noah's truth no matter what it cost. Ethan sat cross-legged on his apartment floor, the faint glow of a lamp casting shadows over the tin box he'd unearthed at the lake, where he and Noah once built forts as kids. Ember curled beside him, her orange fur a soft spark against the worn rug, her green eye half closed but alert. The box held a cassette tape and a photograph of Noah holding a kitten, eerily like Ember, her tiny form cradled in his hands. Noah's voice from the tape still echoed in Ethan's mind. "You're getting closer, Ethan. Ember's not just a guide, she's my echo. Keep following her." The words carried a weight that settled deep in Ethan's chest, a mix of awe and unease. The notebook, from the attic, lay open beside him, its pages filled with Noah's sketches of circuits, animals, and cryptic notes about emotional anchors. One page listed names: Clara, keeper of paths, Victor the skeptic, and others Ethan didn't know, hinting at a network Noah had built before his death. Liam had left hours ago, promising to dig into old contacts who might know about Noah's Echo Seed project, but Ethan couldn't wait. Ember's behavior, her tapping the mirror, pawing at Noah's guitar, leading him to the lake, felt like a map unfolding, one only she could read. He looked at her now, her tail flicking as she stared at the apartment's back door. "What's out there?" he murmured, his voice soft in the quiet night. Ember meowed sharply and padded to the door, her tiny claws scratching the wood. Ethan stood, his heart quickening as he grabbed his jacket, the notebook and the rusted key from the attic drawer. He opened the door, and Ember darted into the yard, her small form weaving through the grass toward a shed Ethan hadn't touched in years. The shed was a relic from Noah's time living here, its door warped and paint peeling. Ember sat by it, her green eye fixed on the lock. Ethan's fingers brushed the key in his pocket, its rust flaking against his skin. He fitted it into the lock, the mechanism groaning before clicking open. Inside was a clutter of tools, fishing gear, and dust-covered boxes. Ember trotted to a corner where a tarp lay, crumpled, her nose low as she pawed at it. Ethan pulled the tarp aside, revealing a wooden crate with Noah's wave symbol carved into the lid. His breath caught as he pried it open, finding a small recorder, a folded map and a note in Noah's handwriting. "If you're here, it's working. Follow the path to where we watched the stars." Ethan's throat tightened. He knew the place, a hill, behind their childhood home where he and Noah used to lie on blankets counting constellations. The map marked it with a red X, alongside coordinates and a single word, Echo. Ethan tucked the recorder and map into his bag, Ember already heading back. To the door, her tail high. He called Liam, leaving a voicemail. "Meet me at the old house tomorrow. Found something else. Ember's leading me." That night he barely slept, his dreams filled with Noah's laugh and the sound of waves. Morning came grey and cold, and Ethan drove to the clinic to check on Ember before heading to the hill. Dr. Larson confirmed Ember was healing well, her stitches holding strong. Ethan brought her home, setting her carrier by the couch. She leapt out and went straight to the bag with the map, her nose brushing its edge. "You're ready, aren't you?" he said, smiling, despite the knot in his chest. Liam met him at the old house, its windows boarded, but the hill behind it unchanged. Ember led the way, her tiny form navigating the overgrown path with purpose. At the hill's crest, where stars had once felt close enough to touch, Ember stopped by a flat stone, half buried in the earth. Ethan knelt, his fingers tracing another wave symbol etched into its surface. He dug carefully, Liam watching in silence, until a metal tin surfaced. Inside was another tape, a small keychain with a wave pendant, and a letter folded tightly. Ethan's hands shook as he opened the letter, Noah's words spilling across the page. "Ethan, you're following her just like I hoped. Ember's my echo, trained to carry what I couldn't say. The tape's the keys, they're pieces of a trail I built for you. There's more, but you need to trust her. She knows where to go." Ethan's eyes stung as he played the tape, Noah's voice warm but urgent. "You're at the hill now. Remember how we dreamed here. The next step is where we faced our fears. Ember's trained for this for you. Keep going." The tape clicked off, and Ethan looked at Liam, whose jaw was tight. "He planned every inch of this," Liam said. "Someone had to set her free at the grave." Ethan nodded, his gaze on Ember, who sat by the stone, her tail sweeping the dirt. The letter mentioned a place of fears, a quarry, where he and Noah had dared each other to jump into the water below as teens. Ethan's stomach twisted at the memory, his fear of heights clashing with Noah's fearless grin. Was that the next step? He tucked the tape and keychain into his bag, the letter folded carefully beside the photograph. Liam clapped his shoulder. "You okay for this?" Ethan nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. Someone out there, Clara, Victor, or another, had placed the case in Ember, had kept her until the moment was right. Were they watching now? He thought of Noah's journal, the list of roles, the idea of memories bound to animals. Ember meowed, pulling him back, her green eye steady. "Let's go home," he said to Liam. "I need to think." Back at the apartment, Ember curled by the lamp, her gaze flicking to the map. Ethan spread it out, studying the quarry's coordinates. The keychain glinted in the light, its wave pendant catching his eye. He held it up, noticing a faint engraving on the back, Echo 2. His pulse quickened. Was there another animal, another guide? He thought of Ember's mirror tapping her insistence on the shed. She wasn't just following Noah's plan, she was leading Ethan to understand it. He opened the notebook, finding a sketch of a keychain, like the one he held, labeled Second Anchor. Noah's words below read, "She'll show you the next when she's ready." Ethan looked at Ember, her tiny form a spark of Noah's will. He felt the weight of the trail, the danger of those who might want Noah's project for themselves. But Ember's gaze held him steady, a promise that Noah's echo was alive. In her. He leaned back, his fingers brushing the photograph, the note's words a quiet vow. "You'll understand when you see her." He was beginning to, and with Ember as his guide, he'd face the quarry, the fears, and whatever lay beyond. Ethan sat on his apartment couch, the faint glow of dawn seeping through the curtains, as Ember nestled against his leg, her orange fur warm under his hand. The tin box from the hill lay open on the coffee table, its contents a cassette tape, a wave pendant keychain, and Noah's letter. If you're here, it's working, spread out like pieces of a puzzle he was only beginning to grasp. Noah's voice from the tape. "You're at the hill now. The next step is where we faced our fears," still rang in his ears, pointing to the quarry where he and Noah had once tested their courage as teens. Ember's green eye watched him, her tail flicking as if urging him forward, but Ethan's mind was tangled with questions. Who had placed the metal case inside her? Who had released her at Noah's grave in Willow Hill Cemetery? Who had carried out Noah's Echo Seed project after his death? The notebook from the attic listed names: Clara, Keeper of Paths, Victor the Skeptic, and others hinting at a network Ethan didn't understand. Liam had promised to dig into Noah's old contacts, but Ethan felt time slipping away. A sharp knock at the door startled him, Ember's ears twitching as she leapt to the floor. Ethan stood, his heart thudding as he approached the door. Ember positioned herself in front of him, her tiny body tense, her green eye fixed on the entrance. He opened, it cautiously revealing a woman in her late 50s, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a loose bun, her eyes sharp yet weary. She wore a faded jacket and carried a canvas satchel, her posture unthreatening but purposeful. "You're Ethan," she said, her voice low and steady. "I'm Clara. I worked with Noah." Ethan's grip tightened on the doorframe, the name from the notebook, hitting like a spark. Ember didn't hiss or retreat, instead, stepping closer to sniff Clara's boots before sitting calmly. Ethan's pulse slowed slightly. "You're on his list," he said. Clara nodded, her expression softening. "I'm the keeper of paths. Noah told me to find you if the project activated. If Ember reached you." Ethan stepped aside, gesturing her in. Clara sat on the edge of the couch, her satchel resting on her lap, as Ember curled nearby, her gaze never leaving the woman. Ethan handed Clara the notebook, pointing to her name. "What is this?" he asked. "What was Noah doing?" Clara's fingers brushed the page, her eyes distant. "Noah believed memories could live beyond us, not just in stories but in the world. He called it the Echo Seed Project, binding emotions to objects, places, animals. Ember was his proof, trained to carry his memory to you." Ethan's throat tightened. He thought of Ember's mirror tapping her, leading him to the shed, the lake, the hill. "She's more than trained," he said. "She knows things." Clara smiled faintly. "That's what makes her special. Noah worked with us to embed emotional cues in her. Sense, sound, touch. She's not just a guide, she's an anchor to his heart." Ethan leaned forward, his mind racing. "Who's us?" Clara's smile faded. "A small group. Me, Victor, a few others. We helped Noah build the system, but he kept parts secret, even from us. After he died, someone continued it, placed the case in Ember, set her free at the grave." Ethan's stomach twisted. "Who?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know. Victor and I parted ways with Noah before the end. He wanted the project public, a tool for everyone. Noah wanted it personal for you." Ethan thought of the note, "You'll understand. When you see her, the photograph of him and Noah on the beach." "Why me?" he asked, his voice thick. Clara's eyes softened. "Because you carried his guilt. Noah knew you blamed yourself for the accident. He wanted you to heal, to find him again." Ethan's chest ached, the memory of the crash-flashing, rain-slicked roads, Noah's car swerving. He pushed it down, focusing on Clara. "What's next?" she said. "The quarry's just the start. Noah left a trail and Ember's the key. But there's danger. Victor's out there, maybe others. They want the project for profit, to sell emotional anchors as therapy." Ethan's hands clenched. "That's not what Noah wanted." Clara nodded, pulling a folded map from her satchel. "This is the next step," she said, pointing to a lighthouse marked with Noah's wave symbol. "It's where he hid the first anchor. You'll need this." She handed him a small compass, its needle trembling but true. Ethan took it, his fingers brushing the cold metal. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Clara's gaze drifted to Ember. "Because Noah believed in you, and because I promised him I'd see it through." She stood, her satchel slung over her shoulder. "I'll be in touch, but you need to move fast. Victor's not far behind." Ethan walked her to the door, Ember following closely. Clara knelt, petting the kitten gently. "You're doing good, little one," she said. "Keep him safe." She left without another word, her figure vanishing into the morning mist. Ethan closed the door, his heart pounding as he looked at Ember. "The lighthouse," he said. "You ready?" She meowed sharply, her tail high. He packed the map, compass, notebook, and the quarry tape, his resolve. "Hardening," Liam called as Ethan loaded Ember's carrier into the truck, his voice tense. "Found something. Noah's old professor knew Victor. Said he's working with a tech group now. Be careful." Ethan nodded, though Liam couldn't see. "We're heading out of the lighthouse. Meet me there." The drive was along the coastal road, winding through fog and pine. Ember sat in her carrier, her nose twitching as if sensing the sea. Ethan thought of Noah's letter. "Follow the path to where we watch the stars," the quarry's mention of facing fears. The lighthouse felt different, a place of light, not fear. He remembered Noah climbing its spiral stairs as kids, laughing at the wind. Was this another piece of their past? The lighthouse loomed ahead, its white tower weathered but standing against the cliffs. Ethan carried Ember inside her carrier light in his arms. The air smelled of salt and rust, the stairs creaking under his boots. At the top, he found a loose panel behind the lantern, a wave symbol scratched into the wood. His fingers pried it open, revealing a small box with a recorder and a note. "This is where I began." Ethan's hands shook as he played the tape, Noah's voice filling the tower. "You're at the lighthouse, Ethan. This is where I dreamed of the echo seed. Ember's carrying more than my memory, she's carrying my hope. Keep going." The tape ended, and Ethan looked at Ember, her green eye gleaming in the lantern's glow. He felt Noah's presence stronger now, a warmth cutting through the fog. The note mentioned a cabin next to Place of Guilt. Ethan's heart sank. He knew it, the cabin where he and Noah had fought before the accident. With Ember as his guide, he'd face it, and whatever Victor wanted with Noah's dream. Ethan stood at the top of the weathered lighthouse, the wind howling through the open lantern room as he clutched the small box he'd pried from behind a panel marked with Noah's wave symbol. Ember sat at his feet, her orange fur ruffled by the salty breeze, her green eye fixed on the box as if she knew its weight. The recorder inside had played Noah's voice, "You're at the lighthouse, Ethan. This is where I dreamed of the echo seed. Ember's carrying more than my memory, she's carrying my hope. Keep going." The words lingered heavy with promise and warning, alongside a note mentioning a cabin, a place of guilt. Ethan's heart sank as he recognized it, the cabin where he and Noah had argued bitterly the night before Noah's fatal accident. The photograph of them on the beach and the original note. "You'll understand when you see her," rested in his pocket, a constant reminder of Noah's plan. Clara's visit that morning, her revelation about Noah's Echo Seed project and the threat of Victor seeking to commercialize it, loomed over him. Ethan tucked the recorder and note into his bag, the lighthouse's cold metal railing grounding him as he looked out at the churning sea. Ember meowed sharply, her tiny claws tapping the floor, pulling him back. He knelt beside her, his fingers brushing her warm fur. "You knew this was here, didn't you?" he said, his voice soft against the wind. Her ear twitched, her gaze steady as if urging him to move. Liam's truck rumbled into the lot below his headlights, cutting through the fog. Ethan carried Ember's carrier down the spiral stairs, his boots echoing in the hollow tower. Liam met him at the base, his face tense. "You found something," he said, eyeing the bag. Ethan nodded, handing him the recorder, played the tape. Noah's voice filled the air again, Liam's jaw tightening as he listened. "A cabin," Liam said when it ended. "You know which one." Ethan's throat tightened. "Yeah. Where we fought." He didn't need to say more. Liam knew the story, the argument, over Ethan's refusal to join Noah's latest project, the harsh words that lingered when Noah drove off into the rain. Ethan pushed the memory down, focusing on Ember, who leapt from her carrier and sniffed the ground, her tail high. "She's leading." "Us," he said, "let's go." They drove inland, the coastal fog giving way to dense pine forests, the road to the cabin narrow and overgrown. Ethan's mind replayed Clara's warning about Victor, a man who'd clashed with Noah over the Echo Seed's purpose. Noah wanted it personal, a trail for Ethan to heal. Victor saw profit, a system to sell emotional anchors as therapy. Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. He wouldn't let Noah's hope be twisted. The cabin appeared through the trees, its roof sagging one, wall charred from a long-ago fire. Ethan parked, his stomach knotting as memories flooded back. He and Noah had come here as teens, fishing in the nearby creek, laughing until their fight tore it all apart. Ember darted from the truck, her tiny form weaving through the grass to the porch. Ethan followed Liam close behind, the air thick with mildew and pine. The door creaked open under Ethan's push, revealing a dusty interior, a table, 2 chairs, a fireplace cold for years. Ember trotted to the fireplace, her nose low, as she pawed at a loose stone. Ethan knelt, his fingers brushing the stone's edge where Noah's wave symbol was faintly carved. His pulse quickened as he pried it free, revealing a small tin nestled in the crevice. Inside was another tape, a rusted key, and a folded bandana blue with white stripes, Noah's favorite. Ethan's breath caught. He remembered Noah tying it around, his wrist joking it was his lucky charm. The tape played Noah's voice softer now. You're at the cabin, Ethan. This is where we broke. I'm sorry for pushing you for not listening. The fight wasn't your fault. I built this trail to show you that. The key unlocks the next anchor where we face the flood. Ember's with you. Trust her. The tape clicked off. Ethan's eyes stung the bandana soft in his hands. He thought of the flood Noah mentioned, a storm that had trapped them here as teens, the creek rising fast. Noah had pulled Ethan from the water, his own fear hidden behind a grin. Ethan hadn't known how much it scared him until now. Liam touched his shoulder. He's still looking out for you. Ethan nodded, his voice thick. The key where we faced the flood. It's the old mill. The mill was a crumbling ruin by the creek where the flood had nearly taken them. Ethan tucked the tape and key into his bag, the bandana folded carefully beside the photograph. Ember sat by the fireplace, her green eye gleaming. You knew, he said. She meowed, her tail sweeping the dusty floor. They stepped outside, the evening air cool against Ethan's skin. He lit a small fire in the cabin's rusted fire pit, the bandana laid beside it as he sat with Liam. Ember stood at the fire's edge, her gaze on the trees. Ethan followed her line of sight, catching a glint of metal between two pines. He stood Ember at his side and approached, finding a handmade trail marker, an arrow pointing deeper into the woods. Ember meowed again, her tiny form already moving. Ethan hesitated, then followed Liam, grabbing the flashlight. The trail wound up hill roots, tangling the path until it opened to a clearing. A wooden platform stood half-built, its beams weathered, a wind chime clinking in the breeze. On the platform was another box marked with Noah's wave. Ethan opened it, his hand steady despite the ache in his chest. Inside was a photograph of Noah as a boy holding a kitten like Ember, and a note. He's not the first, just the one who found you. Ethan's breath hitched. More kittens, more guides. The note listed initials: Clara Victor, others each with roles: keeper, skeptic, witness. Noah hadn't just built a trail, he'd created a system, a network of memory carried by living creatures. Ember nudged his leg, her warmth grounding him. Ethan looked at Liam, who was studying the photograph. This is bigger than we thought, he said. Ethan nodded, the note's words sinking in. He thought of Clara's warning, Victor's ambition, the tape's mention of the mill. The flood had been a turning point, Noah saving him without a word of blame. Ethan felt the bandana in his pocket, the key's weight a promise. He'd go to the mill, face the past, and protect Noah's hope. Ember sat by the box, her green eye steady as the wind chime sang. Ethan felt Noah's presence in the clearing, a whisper of courage. The trail wasn't over, and with Ember leading, he'd uncover the next anchor, no matter who stood in the way. Ethan stood in the clearing near the half-built platform. The wind chimed soft clinks mingling with the rustle of pine needles as he held the box from the lighthouse trail. Its contents: a photograph of Noah as a boy with a kitten like Ember, and a note. He's not the first, just the one who found you. Ember sat beside him, her orange fur catching the fading light, her green eye fixed on the path ahead, as if she already knew the next step. The note listed initials: Clara Victor, others each tied to roles in Noah's Echo Seed project, a network of memory carried by animals trained to guide. Ethan's chest tightened at the scope of it, Noah's vision reaching far beyond the metal. Case found inside Ember at Willow Hill Cemetery. The tape from the cabin still echoed. You're at the cabin, Ethan. The fight wasn't your fault. I built this trail to show you that. The key unlocks the next anchor where we faced the flood. The rusted key, now in his pocket, pointed to the old mill by the creek where a flood had nearly swept them away. As teens, Noah saving Ethan without a word of blame. Ethan felt the blue bandana, Noah's lucky charm, folded beside the photograph of them on the beach. The note: you'll understand when you see her, a constant pulse in his heart. Clara's warning about Victor's ambition to commercialize the project lingered, as did the threat of others who might be watching. Liam stood nearby, his flashlight beam cutting through the dusk. This is getting heavy, he said, studying the note's list of roles. Noah built a whole system. Ethan nodded his resolve. Hardening. And we're not done. The mill's next. Let's move. They hiked back to the truck, Ember trotting ahead, her tail high as if sensing the urgency. The drive to the mill was silent, the forest road twisting through shadows, the air thick with the scent of damp earth. Ethan's mind replayed the flood. The creek's roar, Noah's hand pulling him from the churning water. He'd been so scared then, but Noah's calm had anchored him. Now Noah was gone killed in a crash 3 years ago, yet his echo lived in Ember, guiding Ethan to face the past. The mill loomed ahead, its stone walls crumbling the creek beside it, a quiet murmur now. Ethan parked his heart pounding as he lifted. Ember's carrier. She leapt out her nose low as she darted to the mill's entrance, a rusted gate hanging loose. Ethan followed Liam's flashlight, illuminating the way, the air inside heavy with mildew and moss. Ember weaved through debris, her tiny form unerring, until she stopped at a cracked foundation stone. Ethan knelt, his fingers brushing the faint wave symbol etched into its surface. His pulse quickened as he pried the stone loose, revealing a tin box wrapped in faded cloth. Inside was a recorder, a small notebook, and a photograph of him and Noah soaked and laughing after the flood. Ethan's throat burned, the memory sharp. Noah's arm around him, their fear forgotten in the moment. He played the tape, Noah's voice, steady but raw. "You're at the mill, Ethan. This is where we faced the flood. I never told you how scared I was, but you were my anchor too. The fight at the cabin wasn't your fault. I pushed you away. This trail's for both of us to let go. The next anchor's where I made my choice. Trust Ember." The tape clicked off. Ethan's eyes stung the notebook, trembling in his hands. He opened it, finding Noah's sketches of the echo seed circuits paired with emotions: guilt, fear, hope. 1. Page read, "The choice was mine. The cliff where I said yes." Ethan's breath caught. The cliff was where Noah had proposed to his fiancée Lily, who died a year before him. It was a place of love and loss, where Noah had chosen to keep going, despite grief. Liam read over his shoulder. "He's leading you through everything, isn't he?" Ethan nodded, the photograph heavy in his hand. Noah had saved him in the flood, taken the blame for their fight, built this trail to free Ethan from guilt. Ember meowed, her green eye gleaming as she nudged his knee. "You know where we're going?" he said, his voice thick. She leapt toward the gate, her tail a beacon in the dark. They stepped outside, the creek's murmur a soft echo of the flood. Ethan held the notebook, its final page, listing coordinates for the cliff, and a note: "Ember carries the last key." He thought of Clara's words about Victor's plans to sell emotional anchors, twisting Noah's hope into profit. The photograph of Noah as a boy with a kitten hinted at others animals trained before Ember, each a piece of Noah's system. Ethan felt the bandana, the rusted key, the weight of Noah's love. He looked at Liam. "We go to the cliff tomorrow." Liam nodded, but his eyes were troubled. "If Victor's out there, he'll know you're close." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Let him come." They drove back to the apartment, the night stretching long and cold. Ethan set Ember's blanket by the couch, but she curled by the bag with the notebook, her nose brushing the cliff's coordinates. He sat beside her, studying the photograph of the flood, the way Noah's smile hid his fear. Ethan had carried guilt for years, blaming himself for the cabin fight, for not stopping Noah's drive that rainy night. Now Noah's trail was unraveling. That weight showing Ethan he'd been loved, not blamed. He opened the notebook again, finding a sketch of a cliff with a wave symbol and the words, "Last anchor." Memory lives in choice. Ethan's heart ached. Noah had chosen to propose on that cliff, to live through loss. Was Ethan meant to choose now, to protect the echo seed, or let it go? Ember stirred, her green eye meeting his. He stroked her fur, her warmth grounding him. "You're his hope, aren't you?" he whispered. She meowed softly, her paw tapping the notebook. Ethan felt Noah's presence in her, the echo of a brother who'd never stopped reaching. He packed the bag for the cliff, the recorder key, bandana, notebook, all pieces of Noah's heart. Liam crashed on the couch, promising to join him at dawn. Ethan lay awake, the wind outside mimicking the cliff's howl. He thought of Victor, of the network Clara hinted at, of the kitten in the old photograph. Ember slept beside him, her breathing steady, a reminder that Noah's trail was alive. The cliff would bring answers, maybe danger, but with Ember leading, Ethan would face it just as Noah had faced the flood. He closed his eyes. The note's words, a quiet vow. "You'll understand when you see her." He was beginning to. And the cliff would show him the rest. Ethan woke before dawn, his apartment cloaked in a hush, broken only by Ember's soft breathing as she curled on the couch, her orange fur a faint glow in the dim light. The tin box from the mill rested on the coffee table, its contents a recorder, A notebook and a photograph of him and Noah after the flood, their soaked faces lit with relief. Noah's voice from the tape. "You're at the mill, Ethan. The next anchor's where I made my choice." Trust Ember pointed to the cliff where Noah had proposed to Lily, a place of love carved from loss. The notebook's final page held coordinates, and a note Ember carries the last key alongside sketches of the Echo Seed system, binding memories to animals like Ember. Ethan's heart pounded as he packed the bag, the rusted key blue bandana and photograph of him and Noah on the beach joining. The growing collection of Noah's trail. Clara's warning about Victor's plan to commercialize the Echo Seed loomed large, as did the photograph of Noah as a boy with a kitten hinting at others before Ember. Liam slept on the couch, his steady snores a reminder of the ally by Ethan's side. Ember stirred, her green eye blinking as she leapt to the floor, her nose brushing the bag. "You know where we're going, don't you?" Ethan said, his voice thick with awe. She meowed sharply, her tail high as she padded to the door. Ethan woke Liam with a gentle shake. "Cliff today," he said. Liam nodded, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Let's finish this." They drove through the pre-dawn chill, the road to the cliff winding, past meadows and jagged rock faces. Ethan's mind replayed Noah's proposal to Lily on that cliff, a year before her death, the way he'd chosen hope despite grief. The Echo Seed was Noah's way of giving Ethan that same choice to heal from the guilt of their cabin fight and Noah's fatal crash. Ember sat in her carrier, her nose twitching as if sensing the cliff's salt air. Ethan felt the bandana in his pocket, its stripes worn, but soft, a relic of Noah's courage. The cliff appeared as the sun broke the horizon, its edge sharp against a sky streaked pink and gold. Ethan parked, his stomach knotting as he lifted Ember's carrier. She leapt out, her tiny form darting along a path worn into the grass. Liam followed, his flashlight tucked away, the morning light enough to guide them. Ember led to a flat outcrop where Noah had knelt for Lily, a weathered bench marking the spot. Ethan's throat tightened as he saw the wave symbol carved into its armrest. Ember sat by the bench, her green eye fixed on a small plaque beneath it. Ethan knelt, his fingers brushing the words, "In memory of every choice that shaped us." His pulse quickened as he noticed a hidden compartment. He pried it open, revealing a flash drive, sleek and modern, unlike Noah's tapes. A note tucked beside. It read, "Play when the waves are loudest." Ethan's hands shook as he held the drive, its label Echo Core glinting in the sun. Liam whistled softly. He went high-tech for this one. Ethan nodded, the note's instruction clear. They waited, the waves below crashing louder as the tide rose. When the sound peaked, Ethan plugged the drive into a portable player, his heart racing. Noah's voice emerged, steady but heavy. "Ethan, you're at the cliff. This is where I chose to live despite everything. The Echo Seed isn't just memory, it's healing. Ember's carrying my hope for you to let go of guilt, to choose life. But there's more. Victor's out there. He helped me build this, but we fought. He wants to sell it, turn our work into a product. Be careful." The file ended, but a second began. I wasn't alone that night. Victor was with me before the crash. We argued about the Echo Seed's future. I left angry, didn't see the curve. The player clicked off. Ethan's breath stopped. Victor had been there the night Noah died. Liam's jaw tightened. He's part of this, too close. Ethan nodded, his mind reeling. The photograph of Noah with the kitten, the list of roles, Clara's. Warning all pointed to a network now tainted by Victor's ambition. Ember growled low, her ears back as she stared at the path. Ethan turned, seeing a figure emerge from the trees, a man in his 40s, stocky with a long coat, his hands raised. "I'm Victor," he said, his voice calm but edged. "I'm not here to fight." Ethan stepped in front of Ember, his heart pounding. "What do you want?" Victor's eyes flicked to the flash drive. "To finish what Noah started, but bigger. His system can heal millions, grief, trauma, loss. Imagine it as therapy, not just a trail." Ethan's grip tightened on the player. "Noah wanted it for me, not the world." Victor stepped closer. He was scared of its power, but you've seen what Ember can do. It's bigger than one person. Ember growled again, her tiny body tense. Ethan thought of Noah's voice, the Echo Seeds, healing. Selling it felt like betraying that. "You were there when he died," Ethan said, his voice hard. Victor's face fell. "I tried to stop him from driving. I didn't want him gone. I've been tracking the trail to find you, to make this right." Ethan's chest ached. He looked at Ember, her green eyes steady as if waiting for his choice. "I'm not giving it to you," he said. Victor nodded slowly. "I'll wait. You'll see its potential." He turned, vanishing into the trees. Liam exhaled. That was intense. Ethan knelt beside Ember, her warmth grounding him. "You okay, little one?" She licked his hand, her tail flicking. The flash drive felt heavy, a core of Noah's work now at risk. Ethan thought of the cabin fight, the flood, the cliff, each anchor freeing him from guilt. Noah had built this to heal, not to profit. He stood looking out at the sea, the waves a steady rhythm. There were more names on the list, more anchors to find, but Victor's presence changed everything. Ethan felt Noah's hope in Ember's quiet strength, a guide through the danger ahead. He packed the drive and note the bandana soft in his pocket. Liam clapped his shoulder. "What now?" Ethan looked at Ember, trotting toward the path. "We keep going. She's still leading." The cliff's light faded as they walked back, the wind carrying Noah's echo. Ethan felt the trail shift from memory to protection, a vow to keep Noah's work safe. Ember's green eye gleamed, a spark of hope, unbroken by loss. Ethan stood on the cliff's edge, the sea's roar below mingling with the wind. As he clutched the flash drive labeled Echo Core, its sleek surface a stark contrast to the rusted keys and tapes of Noah's trail. Ember sat beside him, her orange fur ruffled by the breeze, her green eye steady as if she understood the weight of Victor's confrontation moments ago. The man's words, "I'll wait. You'll see its potential," echoed alongside Noah's voice. From the drive, "This is where I chose to live despite everything. The echo seed's healing." Victor's presence at the cliff where Noah proposed to Lily revealed a fracture in the Echo Seed project, a clash between Noah's personal mission to heal Ethan's guilt and Victor's ambition to sell emotional anchors as mass therapy. The photograph of Noah as a boy with a kitten, the list of roles, Clara keeper of paths, Victor the skeptic, and others hinted at a network now at risk. Ethan's heart pounded as he slipped the drive into his bag alongside the blue bandana, the rusted key from the mill and the photograph of him and Noah on the beach. Liam stood nearby, his flashlight, tucked away, the morning light casting long shadows. "That guy's not given up," Liam said, his voice low. Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. "He won't get it. Noah built this for me." Ember meowed, her tail flicking as she trotted toward the path back to the truck. Ethan followed, his mind replaying the trail from Ember's discovery at Willow Hill Cemetery to the lighthouse, the cabin, the mill, and now the cliff. Each anchor had unraveled a piece of his guilt. The cabin, fight, the flood, Noah's crash, showing Ethan he'd been loved, not blamed. Clara's warning about Victor's tech group and the note. "You'll understand when you see her," tied Ember to Noah's hope, a living guide through grief. Ethan felt the bandana in his pocket, its stripes a reminder of Noah's courage. They drove back to the apartment, the road winding through pine forests, the air heavy with salt and earth. Ember curled in her carrier, her nose twitching as if sensing the next step. Ethan's thoughts turned to the notebook's list of roles: witness, archivist, others yet to be found. Were they allies like Clara or threats like Victor? The flash drive held the core of Noah's system, emotional cues, embedded in Ember's senses, a map of healing. Victor wanted to exploit. Ethan's resolve hardened. He'd protect it, no matter the cost. At the apartment, he spread the trails, relics on the kitchen table, tapes, photographs, the keychain from the hill, the lighthouse compass. Ember leapt onto the table, her green eye scanning the items before settling on the notebook. She pawed at it, her claws catching a page Ethan hadn't noticed. He opened it, finding a final entry in Noah's hand. "When it's safe, lock the core. The archive's at the root." Coordinates pointed to a forest near their childhood home, a place Noah called the root of their dreams. Ethan's breath caught. An archive, the heart of the Echo Seed. Liam leaned over, reading the entry. "He's telling you to hide it." Ethan nodded, his fingers brushing Ember's fur. "But first we find it." They left at dawn, the forest road barely a path, the truck rattling over roots. Ember stood in her carrier, her eyes bright, as if she'd been here before. The coordinates led to a clearing where an ancient oak stood, its trunk split from a long-ago storm. Ethan remembered climbing it with Noah, pretending they were explorers. Ember darted to the tree, her nose low as she circled its base. Ethan knelt, finding a wave symbol, carved into a root. He dug his hands, sinking into soft earth until they hit metal. A large tin surfaced, heavier than the others. Inside was a sealed case labeled Core Archive, a small recorder and a note. "Protect this. Ember's the key." Ethan played the tape, Noah's. Voice tired but clear. "Ethan, you've reached the root. This archive holds the Echo Seed's blueprint. Emotional maps sent, triggers everything. Ember's trained to guard it. Lock it away. Others will come." The tape ended. Ethan's hands shook as he opened the case, revealing a chip the size of a grain of rice. This was it, Noah's system distilled. Liam whistled. "That's what Victor wants." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. The chip could heal, but in the wrong hands. It could manipulate trapped people in artificial grief. He thought of Ember's mirror, tapping her, leading him to each anchor. She wasn't just a guide, she was the system's guardian. They drove to a safe house. Liam knew a cabin tucked in the hills, shielded by dense woods. Ethan carried the archive Ember, trotting beside him, her tail high. Inside, they set up a lockbox, wired to a scent lock only Ember's unique markers could open. Ethan programmed it with Clara's help over a burner phone, her voice calm as she guided him through the process. "This is what Noah wanted," she said. "A gatekeeper, not a product." Ethan looked at Ember, curled by the lockbox, her green eye gleaming. "You're the key," he said. She meowed, her paw tapping the box. Liam encrypted the notebook's data-hiding copies in secure drives. They burned the original coordinates, leaving no trace. Ethan felt a weight lift, not the end of grief, but a shift toward peace. The trail had shown him Noah's love, his choice to heal, not blame. Victor's threat remained, but Ethan was ready. Days later, he returned to Willow Hill Cemetery, Ember in her carrier, a thermos of chamomile tea in hand. He set the tea by Noah's headstone, the wave symbol catching the sun. Ember sat beside it, her tail sweeping the grass. "You left me quite a path," Ethan said aloud, his voice steady. "And the best guide." Ember meowed, a soft sound like an answer. Ethan opened the notebook's final page, taped inside a line in Noah's hand. "When it's safe, tell the story." He looked at Ember, her green eye steady. "Ready to be a storyteller," he said. She nudged his hand, her warmth a spark of Noah's hope. Ethan began writing that night, the trail's story, pouring onto the page, each anchor a step toward healing. He wrote of Ember's discovery, the lighthouse's dream, the cabin's forgiveness, the mill's courage, the cliff's choice. The archive was safe, locked with Ember's key, hidden from Victor's reach. Ethan felt Noah in every word, a brother who'd turned loss into a living map. He sent a draft to Clara, her response. Simple. Keep it safe. Tell it when the time's right. Ethan looked at Ember sleeping by the lamp, her tiny form a testament to Noah's love. The trail was over, but its echo lived in him, a choice to carry hope, not guilt. He closed the notebook, the wind outside a soft wave, ready to share Noah's story when the world was ready.